Now, in a few moments, we will interview from London, England, Paul Weston, who has been a guest on this show quite a few times in the past. He's a free speech advocate. He's quite a fierce critic of Islamic radicalism, too. I agree with him on some issues, but not all. Well, that's hardly the point. In fact, that is precisely, exactly, totally not the point. It is not whether you agree with someone, but whether you agree with freedom of speech that should decide your reaction to all of this subject. Now, Weston was arrested this past weekend in England for quoting the words of Winston Churchill, the saviour of democracy and the great enemy of Nazism. He did this from the steps of Winchester Guildhall. Now, here's a part of that short speech.
How dreadful are the curses which Islam lays on its votaries. Besides the fanatical frenzy, which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog, there is this fearful, fatalistic apathy. The effects are apparent in many countries. Improvident habits, slovenly systems of agriculture, sluggish methods of commerce and insecurity of property exist wherever the followers of the Prophet Muhammad rule or live. A degraded sensualism deprives this life of its grace and refinement.
Strong words, but a mere speech led to an arrest. Now, where the speech was made was relevant because it was in the centre of the ancient and quite lovely town Winchester that was once the capital of Old England, where Alfred the Great built his resistance to invasion and established the freedoms that Anglo-Saxons and by extension Canadians so enjoy and relish today. Now, it could be argued that Weston was making a bit of a nuisance of himself by using a megaphone, that he was disrupting the peace, even that maybe he's an extremist. We'll ask him about that shortly, but the day we arrest people for that sort of thing is a very sorry day indeed. Let's be honest here. You can be an annoying extremist in Canada, in Britain, and elsewhere if your politics are leftist or Islamic enough. It's the Conservatives and the Christians who always seem to be arrested. Now, Weston is a candidate in the upcoming European elections, and he was arrested after quoting a passage about Islam. And this is important, written, as I said, by Winston Churchill. This was during a campaign speech, part of the essence of parliamentary democracy. Apparently, a member of the public took offence at the quote taken from Churchill's book, The River War, and then called the police. 6 or 7 cops arrived, they questioned Weston for about 40 minutes, and then they arrested him. As I say, I don't always agree with Mr. Weston on many things, but I do love Churchill, and I love his works and his achievements. He did win the Nobel Prize for Literature, you know, for his writing. He did save the world from racist tyranny and barbarism. And I do think that my right to free speech and to quote great literature is sacred. Now, here is something else that Winston Churchill said.
We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Pretty good, eh? A great man who believed in freedom. Remember, pornography is allowed and protected under law. Anti-Christian and anti-Israel propaganda is allowed and protected under law. Islamic extremist ideas are allowed and protected under law. So I will quote the magnificent Winston Churchill here and now. If you don't want to hear it, watch another show. Okay, just turn it off. It's easy, simple. It's your right in a free country, just as it's my right to speak, as Paul Weston did. I quote Churchill. How dreadful are the curses which Mohammedanism lays on its votaries, besides the fanatical frenzy which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog. There is this fearful, fatalistic apathy. The effects are apparent in many countries. Improvident habits, slovenly systems of agriculture, sluggish methods of commerce, and insecurity of property exist wherever the followers of the Prophet rule or live. A degraded sensualism deprives this life of its grace and refinement, the next of its dignity and sanctity. The fact that in Mohammedan law every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as a child, a wife, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power among men. Thousands become the brave and loyal soldiers of the faith, all know how to die, but the influence of the religion paralyzes the social development of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world. Far from being moribund, Mohammedanism is a militant and proselytizing faith. End of quote. There. Arrest me if you want, but I'd rather die free than live as a slave. And I really hope you agree.
The fact that in Islamic law, every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as a wife, a child, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power amongst men.
Now, Paul Weston is a British politician, and I just discussed this. It's quite a radical one. He was arrested this weekend for quoting Winston Churchill. He has strong views about Islam, Paul Weston. He has strong views about culture and politics. But then I always assumed that that was a basic human right. The leader of the party, Liberty GB, joins us now from London. Paul, what were you charged with?
I was initially charged with a failure to obey a dispersal notice because my words, well, Winston Churchill's words, were causing offence and distress. I was then taken to the police station. That charge was dropped and I was rearrested on a racially aggravated crime under the Public Order Act.
Now, I'll be absolutely candid with you. If they had said you didn't have the right to use a megaphone and it was annoying people just because of the volume, OK, that's one thing. But you didn't mention race at any time. You merely quoted Winston Churchill, an enemy of racism, talking about what he thought were the dangers of Islam. What is racist about that?
Well, exactly. And I pointed out at the police station that Islam is not a race, but it didn't seem to carry very much weight. And they went ahead and went through the interview and the prosecution as though it was the most normal thing in the world for them to do. I was astonished.
Now, we should juxtapose this with what else goes on in the United Kingdom, and whatever happens in Britain will come to Canada before very long. For example, during Remembrance Day, there are Islamic radicals who burn poppies and say British soldiers should burn in hell, and they're protected by the police. They're allowed to do that. That's and I think they should be. It appalls me, but I think they do have that right. But you quoted Winston Churchill, the former Prime Minister of Britain, leader of the free world, and you were arrested. This doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it's these terrible double standards we have over here because the government is absolutely terrified of radical Islam and of fundamentalist Muslims causing trouble on the streets. So they go out of their way not to arrest anybody from the Islamic community, no matter what awfully dreadful things they get up to, but they will immediately arrest anybody from the non-Muslim side of it who dares to raise his voice in protest about what's going on. And, you know, the reason they do this is because if they have to admit that there is a serious problem with Islam, then they would have to do something about it. And they are simply too careerist or too frightened to do anything about it. And that is the awful situation that we have in England and in Britain now.
Now, when you were arrested, two questions. How did the crowd react? It's a very law-abiding town, Winchester, by the way, very beautiful. And how did the police actually react when they spoke to you?
Well, the police were very polite. I do have to hand that to them. I have no problem with the junior-ranking police at all. They're just following orders from above. And as far as the crowd was concerned, this all happened very quickly. It was all over within 3 to 4 minutes, I think, before the police arrived. And a small crowd had gathered. I would say 80% of them were agreeing, and there was the very loud 20% that were shouting Nazi and Islamophobe. And Islamophobe. Islam means submission. Phobia means an irrational fear. And so they're telling me that I have an irrational fear of submission. But they were the smaller percentage. The majority of the crowd agreed with what I was saying.
Well, there was nothing at all racist about what you said. Islam is not a race, as you mentioned earlier. It's all sorts of people with different backgrounds. There are publicly funded, taxpayer-funded dramas, TV shows, even demonstrations, indirectly publicly funded, attacking Christianity all of the time in the United Kingdom. The most ugly things are said about Christianity. And once again, I defend people's right to say that. Far more phobic, if you like, about Christianity. You merely quote a Prime Minister of Britain who knew Islam very well. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And it's not very flattering of Islam, but so what? And you're arrested. Surely you cannot be convicted of this.
I honestly don't know. It's gone to the Crown Prosecution Service. They have been taken over 20, 30 years ago by the radical left. They will do their utmost to make sure it goes to court. If it goes to court, I would be most surprised if I was to lose, but one never knows. And if I did lose, because it's racially aggravated, this now makes it a 2-year imprisonment. So, you know, I want to go to court, I want to argue my point, but I certainly don't want to lose.
You know, as I said in the monologue, I don't agree with you about everything. You've been on the show, we know each other. But the day that someone who expresses an opinion about a world faith that is not completely positive and is arrested and maybe even convicted and incarcerated is the day we have lost the basic freedom that that great man Winston Churchill fought so hard and so long to maintain. I do wish you luck in this. Thank you very much indeed.